What is cultural appropriation? What is cultural appreciation? And how are both of these different from one another? Watch this video to find out what the difference is between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation so that you can quickly have a solid understanding of what to do to remain respectful of other people's cultures and traditions. I'm Mallory Graham, Anishinaabemowin from TribalTradeCo.com. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell for new videos every week on smudging the Indigenous culture and Native teachings. How can you ensure that you are being respectful of other people's cultural beliefs? How do you balance showing appreciation for the Indigenous culture or another ethnicity without doing something wrong, insulting, or upsetting people from that ethnicity or background? We've been asked a lot if it's okay for non-Indigenous people to participate in the Indigenous cultural activities, and if certain things are cultural appropriation or cultural appreciation. So we put together this video to share what the key differences are between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. We as Indigenous people have an extremely rich and vibrant culture. For a long time though, it has been subject to replication that is not done in the most respectful way, which has led to a lot of people not feeling great in the First Nations and in the tribal communities. The Native culture is so beautiful, and many people wish to adopt the traditions and practices within the Native culture. And if this is something that you want to do, we want to share how to do this in the most respectful way possible. There is a significant contrast between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, and it's important to know the difference. So let's first talk about cultural appropriation and how it's different from appreciation. Cultural appropriation is when someone takes elements of a culture that is not their own and reuses it or reduces it into a trend, stereotype, or a pop culture item. This is typically done in a way that stereotypes norms and is not done so carefully or respectfully whatsoever. Some examples include mass producing headdresses as a trendy accessory, or mimicking tribal face paint as a way of getting dressed up for a concert or festival. One of the key ways to know the difference between cultural appropriation and appreciation is with the staple example of the headdress. Now let's talk about using headdresses. Headdresses are sacred items that have been gifted to leaders who have earned the right to wear them. They've earned this right through a complex process of protocols and ceremonies. To learn the significance of the Native American headdress, watch this video right here. Similarly, tribal face paint is part of a network of sacred traditions. These traditions and sacred practices are completely disregarded when you paint your face for fun. By disregarding these traditions, many people say that you are disrespecting the people who have created those sacred traditions and is essentially the core of cultural appropriation. However, many tribal people have different opinions regarding these different practices and the extent to which they are offensive and executing cultural appropriation. I personally know of some people that get deeply offended by different traditions like face paint and other sacred practices that exude cultural appropriation. Other traditions that have significant meaning in the Indigenous culture being used in a way that is not respectful can be extremely offensive to some people, whereas other Indigenous people don't get as offended. For me personally, if a person was engaging in an activity without any intention of being disrespectful whatsoever and they're just meaning to have fun, I personally don't have an issue with it. But I know there's a lot of people in the Indigenous community that would say that people should have the responsibility to educate themselves so that they aren't doing anything that could possibly be disrespectful. But for me personally, it all depends on what your intentions are when you're doing anything. The second key difference between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation is when we're talking about costumes that display harmful stereotypes. Perhaps the most obvious and well-known disrespect for the Indigenous culture is Halloween costumes, as well as mascots that amplify harmful stereotypes that Indigenous people have been fighting against for centuries. Essentially, cultural appropriation takes advantage of sacred practices and cultural traditions, and instead reduces them to just for fun and sometimes even mockery and stereotypes. This act can severely hurt and disrespect those people that the cultural traditions belong to. Have you ever heard of these cultural appropriations before? Or are there any others that you'd like to share with us? Please share in the comments below. Now let's talk about cultural appreciation. What is cultural appreciation? You can practice cultural appreciation by taking the time to research and learn about the culture that you are interested in. Being informed demonstrates that you seek to honor the culture instead of taking advantage of it, or twisting it into something that is geared toward mass marketability. This is considered cultural appreciation. The key here is to be consistently involved and actively participate in the culture. Include Indigenous people in the conversation. Ask us questions about our culture. Learn the collective history of your country, including that of the Indigenous people. In many cases, a disrespect of a culture is often a symptom of lack of knowledge and lack of research and learning about the culture. So now we've gone through the key differences between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation. So now what do we need to do? To put it simply, learn and then listen to your instincts. If something feels like it's blatantly wrong, or it feels like it's taking advantage of another person's culture in a bad way, then it probably is. But you can know for sure just by understanding the history of Native people and learning about our most sacred practices and traditions. A great place to start is just by learning what ways are appropriate to address Indigenous people and in what context the different names are acceptable. You can find a great video that walks you through the do's and don'ts right here. So now after watching this video, you should know the key differences between cultural appropriation and cultural appreciation, so you can confidently practice Indigenous teachings and ceremonies while remaining respectful to Indigenous people. If you're wanting to learn more about the various sacred medicines and the smudging process, then download our free smudging guide at the link in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.